Number 5. Dagon and the Deep Ones. Coming up first on our list is a multifaceted entry with Dagon and the Deep Ones who worship him. They kinda go together. What is a Deep One? It's not a sea monster that went to first year philosophy and is always trying to wax poetic, but rather a Deep One refers to a race of amphibious, humanoid-like-ish sea creatures closely resembling creatures like frogs or axolotls. If you've ever seen Hellboy's Abe Sapien or the monster from Shape of Water, those monsters are actually a pretty good representation for what a Deep One should look like. Deep Ones get their name from their homes, deep beneath the sea, obviously, where they live out their cold, often miserable lives. When Deep Ones do venture to the surface, they do so to sweep humans under their influence, promising them riches in exchange for worship, sometimes even mating with them, creating disgusting hybrid Deep Ones. And first and foremost, to ingratiate them into the cult of Dagon, worshipping their master, Dagon, a massive Deep One of fantastic power. Dagon appears in the short story appropriately named Dagon, which is also a great jumping on point if you've ever been curious about reading H.P. Lovecraft and you didn't know where to start. It's one of the first appearances of any of the Lovecraft monsters at all. Dagon is worshipped by humans and Deep Ones in equal measure, no doubt thanks to his influence. Dagon is immortal, massive, and commands a lot of respect. It's unknown what the full extent of Dagon's power is, but given that he's an immortal sea monster with dominion over a race of pelagic nightmares that do his every bidding, let's assume that if he really wanted to stir up trouble, it would not be that difficult for him. Just ask the town of Innsmouth how they feel about their master. They've got nothing but positive things to say, I'm sure. And hey, while I got you here, if you're liking what we do, we'd always appreciate a subscribe our way, and you'll catch the best horror videos in your inbox every single day. Number 4, the Shoggoths. A shoggoth or a shoggoth, I'm really not sure, which does sound a bit like something a 1920s chimney sweep might yell at you to get off. Hey, shoggoth! Is a disgusting, writhing mess of iridescent black slime and a sea of eyeballs engineered by the Elder Things to function as a race of tools for their will, as they're mostly used for undersea construction. They're amorphous, shape-shifting monstrosities, able to mock and reflect all matter of organ and life. A shoggoth is capable of molding itself however it needs to see fit to accomplish its dark dealings, which make them the perfect tools for the Elder Things. Now, the first generation of shoggoths were brainless husks, solely driven to appease their masters. But over the eons of their existence, the shoggoths began to mutate and develop a low form of consciousness, eventually rising up and overthrowing the Elder Things altogether and working for themselves to build their own cities, where they now reside in their city in Antarctica, poorly imitating their old masters, shrieking "Tikali" over and over, an old rallying cry the Elder Things would shout at the shoggoths to get them to work. Poor little amorphous shape-shifting monstrosities. Now, although a shoggoth was intended to serve mostly as a being for construction, they're not without their abilities. A shoggoth is hulkingly strong, capable of crushing a human in seconds, and they're known for using their brute strength to solve problems in their way. For example, the shoggoth that makes an appearance in the Mountains of Madness crushes an entire rookery of penguins that was in its way beneath its mighty weight. While the shoggoths don't seem to have any higher goals or aspirations, they've shown themselves to be threatening enough that if crossed, you'll regret ever dismissing them as nothing more than tools. Number 3. Yugollinak. Yugollinak is colloquially known as the Defiler and is more properly known as the god of depravity and perversion, which is just about the worst way you can introduce yourself on a first date. Yugollinak isn't just into human perversions, oh no. This wretched great one has its sights set on something much bigger than anything our little human brains could conjure up. Yugollinak is after depravity on an incomprehensible scale. That's a word that gets thrown around a lot in the Lovecraft mythos, incomprehensible. Yugollinak's true form is unknown, as it seems to exist in a state outside of a physical body. But when it's looking to pursue some of its disgusting pleasures, it always acquires a human host. And when it takes a human host, it warps its body into a wretched, grotesquely obese form, lacking a head or a neck, and featuring a mouth in the palm of both hands. And I cannot imagine that it is getting up to anything good with those palms. Yugollinak is unlike most other great ones in that it's capable of directly speaking to humans in plain old English instead of indecipherable guttural noises. Its ability to speak English and communicate is what helps it to pursue its dark goals, as it seeks out humans who read perverse and forbidden literature, and it doesn't just hunt 50 Shades of Grey fans. It plants seeds of interest in human minds to research and eventually manipulating curious enough humans to read from the Revelation of Glocki, a cursed book containing Yugollinak's name. When read, it will be summoned. When Yugollinak is summoned, it makes its guests an offer, offering to make the summoner into a priest of Yugollinak, welcoming them into its service. It's best to accept this gracious offer, as a rejection will offend Yugollinak deeply, leading to the summoner to become its next meal. Unfortunate for you, but either way, Yugollinak is very pleased with the outcome. Either it gets a new servant for its life, or it gets a nice little midday snack. Number 2. Nyarlathotep. Now, Nyarlathotep is one of the most sinister entities in all of the Lovecraft pantheon, and one of the most popular beings as well, appearing across several stories in the universe, both by Lovecraft and other authors over the years. Nyarlathotep first appears in the short story, Nyarlathotep, which is also another great jumping on point for new Lovecraft fans who want to get into the lore somewhere and don't know where to start. It's pretty self-contained. Nyarlathotep is unique in the pantheon for several reasons, but first and foremost is its freedom. Nyarlathotep isn't trapped under the sea or in the stars like Cthulhu or Azathoth, but rather enjoys the freedom of the earth as it wanders. It usually likes taking the form of a man, wandering as a tall, joyous, friendly man, all the better for it to influence people with. It's said that Nyarlathotep has thousands upon thousands of forms and manifestations, and we can probably safely assume that most of them are horrifying and sanity-destroying. Nyarlathotep could actually be described as the most human-like of any of the elder gods, which makes it all the more threatening. It's able to sway humans easily, gathering cults of personality around it. The original short story in which it appears, Nyarlathotep is gaining influence over the populations by wandering the world, performing incredible miracles, claiming to have lived for 27 centuries, winning over the hearts and minds of legions of followers willing to devote themselves completely for Nyarlathotep's will. Now, Nyarlathotep seems to take a sickening pleasure in driving humans to madness. For Nyarlathotep, death isn't the end game, but manipulating and twisting humans, driving them to insanity, that's the thrill. I guess it gets pretty boring being an unending, unstoppable power beyond the stars. You gotta find something to keep the day exciting, right? Merely being around Nyarlathotep is enough to make a man sick. Nyarlathotep isn't the absolute most powerful entity in the mythos, but it is definitely one of the most nefarious and threatening. Number 1, Yog-Sothoth. Oh, it doesn't even feel good saying that coming out of the throat. I shouldn't be talking about stuff like this. This is above my pay grade. Yog-Sothoth is a horrifying, unfathomably powerful god, and one of the most powerful gods in the whole mythos. If there's one big takeaway from H.P. Lovecraft's mythos, it's that there's always bigger fish up the food chain. We are so insignificant compared to everything else in the cosmos, but we think ourselves so important. We, the beastly fools of mankind, are dwarfed by the radiant greatness of Cthulhu, but Cthulhu himself is dwarfed by creatures like Yog-Sothoth. Yog-Sothoth, or Yogi as his close friends like to call him, is the embodiment of all time and space across the multiverse. Yog-Sothoth, like most gods in the Lovecraft pantheon, is an indescribable horror beyond human comprehension, and like Nyarlathotep, is known to be able to manifest and take several avatars to better serve its needs. But its most common form is described as that of being a massive, fractally glowing green orbs that continuously merge, separate, and regrow in an unending, spiraling sea of tentacles, tendrils, and eyes. Yog-Sothoth sees all. As the manifestation of time and space across the multiverse, there is nothing that can escape its gaze. It's wise to the entirety of all knowledge. It tempts humans by offering to impart that knowledge to those foolish enough to try and take advantage of that offer, who'll then have their lives utterly destroyed by madness after seeking its favor. The mere sight of Yog-Sothoth in its natural form is enough to destroy the human brain irreparably. Now, Yog-Sothoth's goals are just utterly beyond our understanding. It can't even be truly said that Yog-Sothoth is evil in the manner we understand. Our ideas of morality and good and evil just wouldn't register to a being like this. We're just too small to even begin to comprehend the horrors of the multiverse. And it's best we don't, because the more you try to study something like this, the more your obsession grows, and the more you seal your own fate.
Defeat my fancy. It is man's relation to the cosmos, to the unknown, which alone arouses in me the spark of creative imagination.
Kicking off at number 5, Lu-Cthulhu. And what better way to start off this list than with the mother of all old gods herself, Lu-Cthulhu, also known as Lu-Cthulhu, or as a much more horrifying title, the birth womb of the great old ones. This twisted, pulsating mass of a mother was created by James Ambule, with its one and only appearance in the 1998 short story Correlated Contents, which makes the very little that we do know about it even more terrifying. It poses the question, what does this hulking cosmic entity have in store for us? Well, Lu-Cthulhu appears as a colossal conglomeration of innards, spanning the size of a large planetary body. Imagine the planet Mars, but instead of a rocky desert-like surface, it's made up of skin and flesh and whatever else lies beneath. Lu-Cthulhu possesses a strange slimy outer surface covered in countless thousands of pulsating pustules, which in fact are biological incubators, each containing a great old one in its larval stage. Basically, each one of its warts contains a small, sprightly little baby Cthulhu, or worse, and it's currently unknown how often these entities reach maturity. Hopefully for us, it's not a regular occurrence. Gross, right? Next up at number 4, Groth, which kind of sounds like the sound you make when you do a sick burp, right? Groth, also known as the Harbinger, is an all-powerful outer god that floats without purpose across the endless cosmic abyss like some malevolent, omniscient nuclear karaoke ball. Groth is the size of a moon and coloured in a rusty shade of orange, all encompassed by an enormous, terrifying red eye, which often closes to avoid the detection of any nearby hostile entities. It has appeared twice in the Cthulhu mythos, first in the 1976 short story The Tugging by Ramsey Campbell, and later in 2004 in the Call of Cthulhu RPG game splat book The Stars Are Right. Groth spends eternity simply drifting throughout the cosmos, while terrifyingly singing its strange song, the music of the spheres. It serves a simple function. Whenever Groth nears a planet, any dormant great old one or outer god on the world will respond to its song and awaken, almost always resulting in the destruction of the planet, the annihilation of all life, or both. In one Lovecraftian instance, Groth was indirectly responsible for awakening the great old one known as the worm that gnaws in the night, who proceeded to consume the alien planet of Shagai from the inside out. Pretty metal, eh? Coming in at number 3, Shub-Niggurath. You betcha, aka the black goat of the woods with 1,000 young, an outer god who is the very definition of how messed up the Lovecraftian universe can get. Just like Lu-Cthulhu, she is a perverse fertility deity responsible for belching forward some of the vilest creatures in the whole of the Cthulhu mythos. She appears as an evil cloud-like entity, an enormous mass which extrudes black tentacles, slime-dripping mouths, and more strangely than any other, short, writhing goat legs. She is the wife of the not-to-be-named one, don't ask, and the wife of Yog-Sothoth, who spawned forth the twins Nub and Yeb. Across the entire mythos, Shub-Niggurath is probably the most extensively worshipped by hundreds of twisted alien cultures and even druidic and barbaric cults on Earth. Her dark young are horrifying, pitch black monstrosities seemingly comprised of ropey tentacles who stand as tall as a tree on a pair of stumpy, you guessed it again, hoofed legs. Also, her milk, yes, you heard that correctly, her milk is often used in cult ceremonies, mutating those that drink it into fierce spawns of her brood. Nevertheless, she's seen as one of the most horrific creatures in horror fiction, being referenced several times by both Stephen King and Terry Pratchett, even making her way referentially into the Doctor Who universe. She's a pretty big deal, put it that way. Next up at number 2, Wilbur Whateley. This guy makes my number 2 spot simply because when I first read The Dunwich Horror, a short story by H.P. Lovecraft written way back when in 1928, for me, he was the most terrifying character throughout the whole damn thing, even more so than his twin brother, the titular Dunwich Horror, who, if we're being honest, was just the sad, misunderstood result of a mad woman and an outer god. Have some sympathy, guys. Wilbur Whateley was born in the rural town of Dunwich, Massachusetts, near the city of Arkham, where most Lovecraftian fiction takes place. The date of his birth was noted as the night before the hills rumbled and the dogs barked incessantly, which was telling because dogs continued to show an instinctual hatred for Wilbur the remainder of his life. Good job, doggos. We can always rely on you. Let's not glean over it. Wilbur Whateley was a pretty ugly dude. The reason being that, well, he was made up of outer godness. As a child, he was described as a dark, goatish looking infant and displayed an unnatural physical and mental development. He could walk unassisted at 7 months and talk at 11 months. At the age of 4, he began growing facial hair. If you've seen the 1970 B movie, then you'll know what we're getting at, because that final reveal where Wilbur disintegrates into the floor, yeah, That's not nice. And finally, at number 1, Nyarlathotep. Because let's be real, no other entity in the Cthulhu mythos is as innately evil as our good old friend Dr. Nyarlathotep. The big bad himself, the ancient evil that walks on 2 legs and has many names. The Black Wind, the Crawling Mist, the Haunter of the Dark, the God of the Bloody Tongue. You may not know it, but this guy is pretty much the culmination of every evil fictional overlord since his first appearance in Lovecraft's 1920 prose poem of the same name. He is a creature that carries many masks, but usually appears as a tall, handsome, joyous man with welcoming features. All of this is a ruse, however, as told in 1932's The Dreams in the Witch House. He has 1,000 other forms that will immediately invoke madness to whoever witnesses him. It's strange because out of most of the outer gods who are evil and all-powerful but never really demonstrate a clear purpose or agenda, Nyarlathotep seems to be deliberately deceptive and manipulative, operating a clear agenda to achieve his twisted goals and making him the most human-like amongst all the outer gods. His one true goal is to spread madness, which is more enjoyable than death and destruction, and it is often suggested in the Cthulhu mythos that eventually he will destroy the entirety of the human race, while laughing like a madman. Well, let's hope not, eh?
In at number 5 we have Cthulhu. Cthulhu is a great old one who lies in a death-like slumber beneath the Pacific Ocean in his sunken city of R'lyeh. He is the titular character of the Cthulhu mythos, first appearing in the 1928 story The Call of Cthulhu. Now, while he is not the most powerful of Lovecraft's creations, he is certainly the most famous, with his name becoming associated with evil and Lovecraftian horror since the 1920s. This monstrous creature was born on the planet Vol, I think that's how you say it, located in the 23rd Nebula. He travelled to the star Zoth where he spawned his offspring. In most stories, Cthulhu lays dormant deep under the ocean within the sunken city of R'lyeh, but he can still influence the world via many telepathic powers and, of course, his many cults and otherworldly minions. It is said that once Cthulhu awakens, he shall rise from the depth and end the world. Thankfully he is yet to do so, but he has come close. In the 1920s, a group of sailors came across his sunken city, which had been brought to the surface by the alignment of the stars. They opened up the strange buildings only for Cthulhu to exit and attack them. The creature halted its attack when the sailors used their ship to cut him in half. As they sailed away, they could see Cthulhu reforming into a whole being again. His appearance changes from story to story, but he is most often portrayed as a monster of vaguely humanoid shape with a squid-like face and wings. He is also considered terrifyingly large and apocalyptic, being the size of a mountain. Being nearly godlike to humans, Cthulhu is immortal and has great strength and can endure great amounts of damage and can only be killed by near omnipotent power. In at number 4 we have Yugollinak. Also known as the Defiler, Yugollinak is a creation of Ramsey Campbell, first appearing in the short story Cold Print. He is a great old one and the god of depravity and perversions. However, it should be noted that Yugollinak is over any type of perversions that any sapient being can conceive of. He is an entity so feared that the Cthulhu cult is noted to hold him in contempt. He resides behind a brick wall in an undisclosed area, his goal being to eventually break free from his entrapment and destroy everything in his path. To this end, Yugollinak creates a cult enlisting folks who read forbidden literature. This results in him manipulating his victims into reading a chapter of the Revelation of Galaki, which houses his name. Once summoned, he will ask the summoner to become his priest. If not, he will devour them. Not only that, but he has the ability to possess potential hosts. Upon acquiring a host, Yugollinak is manifested as a morbidly obese man lacking a head and neck. On top of that, he sports 2 mouths on the palms of his hands. In the short story we mentioned earlier, Cold Print, Yugollinak takes over a bookstore after he gruesomely murdered the owner and took his skin. To quote Revelations of Galaki, Volume 12, beyond a gulf in the subterranean night, a passage leads to a wall of massive bricks, and beyond the wall rises Yugollinak, to be served by the tattered eyeless figures of the dark. Long has he slept beyond the wall, and those which crawl over the bricks scuttle across his body, never knowing it to be Yugollinak. But when his name is spoken or read, he comes forth to be worshipped, or to feed and take on the shape and soul of those he feeds upon. For those who read of the evil and search for its own form within their minds call forth evil, and so may Yugollinak return to walk among men. Very creepy. In at number 3 we have Nyarlathotep. Also known as the Crawling Chaos, Nyarlathotep is an outer god hailing from the Cthulhu mythos. A creation of H.P. Lovecraft, he first appeared in his prose poem of the same name released back in 1920. Now he differs from other deities in the mythos in a number of different ways. Most of the the outer gods such as Yog-Sothoth and Azathoth are exiled to the stars, and most of the great old ones are sleeping and dreaming like Cthulhu. Nyarlathotep, however, is active and frequently walks the earth in the guise of a human being, usually a tall, slim, joyous man. It is said that he has thousands of other forms, all reputed to be horrific and sanity blasting. Now, while most outer gods seem to have cults serving them, Nyarlathotep seems to serve several cults and takes care of their affairs in the other outer gods' absence. Not only that, but Nyarlathotep uses human language as opposed to the alien languages the other gods use. He also enacts the will of the outer gods and is their messenger, heart and soul, the immemorial figure of the deputy or messenger of hidden and terrible powers. He is also the servant of Azathoth, whose fitful wishes he immediately fulfills. Like I said before, his first appearance was in the eponymous short story by Lovecraft, in which he wanders the earth, gathering legions of followers through his demonstrations of strange and seemingly magical instruments. Coming in at number 2, we have Yog-Sothoth. Yog-Sothoth is a cosmic entity and outer god hailing from the world of Lovecraft. Born of the nameless mist, he is the progenitor of Cthulhu, Hastur the unspeakable, and the ancestor of the Vormi. Now, throughout many different stories in the mythos, his appearance changes depending on the author. However, there seems to be a common agreement that Yog-Sothoth visually manifests as a mass of glowing orbs, with eyes or sometimes even tendrils in some versions. It is also heavily implied that he is omniscient and is locked outside the universe, which means he can know and see all of space-time all at once. In other words, there are no secrets kept from Yog-Sothoth. Now, Yog-Sothoth is called upon from time to time to assist mortals in performing occult deeds or rituals, the most notable occurring in the case of Charles Dexter Ward and the Dunwich Horror. In one case involving the town of Dunwich, Yog-Sothoth is known to have been summoned for a sole purpose of impregnating a human female, who then gave birth to 2 partially human children, where still the summoner was the husband, who was known to have stood on a hill in a circle of stones with a Necronomicon while shouting the name of Yog-Sothoth from the summit. And finally, coming in at number 1, we have Azathoth. Also known as the blind idiot god, the demon sultan, and the nuclear chaos, Azathoth is the overarching antagonist of the Cthulhu mythos and my personal favourite god. He is a cosmic and boundless deity of colossal proportion and the great and all-powerful ruler of the outer gods. He first appeared in the 1922 unfinished short story of Azathoth in name only, before being mentioned in multiple other Lovecraft stories, including the Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath. It is said that he is omnipotent, beyond the power of the great old ones such as Cthulhu and even his fellow outer gods, that includes Yog-Sothoth and Yib. Azathoth is seen as the all-powerful creator of all of existence. Azathoth's appearance is only hinted at throughout the mythos, being described as occupying a position outside of the universe, where it is attended by a cohort of alien servants who continually bathe it with the sounds of pipes and drums. All of reality is merely a part of Azathoth's dream, which was unknowingly created by itself. When Azathoth awakens, all things will end once and for all, and all will once again be Azathoth. He cannot be destroyed, as the concept of destruction is merely his dream, and he exists beyond the concept of speed, strength, mortals, and the outer gods, as they are all merely part of his dream. Essentially, none of this is real, we're just inside Azathoth's dream. Love that for us.